Good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar where we're talking about 1031 tax-free exchanges and other real estate trends. We've titled this one, The Big Real Estate Shift, Urban Migration and the 1031 Exchange. And as always, I am Dan Ukelson, the Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. With that, it's now my pleasure to introduce Rusty Tweed, the CEO of TFS Properties and recognized expert on 1031 exchange transactions. And some of you may recognize Rusty's name. He's also the CEO and founder of Mold Zero, which a lot of our members are reaching out to these days and getting some great service. TFS Properties specializes in top real estate markets throughout the United States that exhibit strong and stable growth. TFS Properties walks their clients through every step of the 1031 exchange process to best take advantage of this important IRS tax saving rule. As a founder and CEO of TFS Properties, Rusty has been involved in real estate transactions through his entire professional career, having purchased his first rental property just about at 22 years of age. Following a move to LA, Rusty began sourcing and flipping foreclosures prior to the real estate crash during the Great Recession. He had completed well over 30 plus real estate property flips at that time. His work with 1031 exchange transactions began after being introduced to Bill Executor, who many of you know and has done a few of these webinars for us, who is now the CEO of Executor 1031 Exchange Services. And as I mentioned, also a frequent webinar guest of ours. Rusty and his team at TFS Properties have since assisted clients in over hundreds of 1031 exchange transactions involving hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate. Also joining Rusty today, we have Eddie Wang, who's described as Rusty's right-hand guy, who's out there searching constantly for great deals to do 1031 exchanges with. So Rusty, welcome, and thank you again for sponsoring today. Eddie, welcome. We're glad you could join us as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, we really appreciate. We've had a long relationship. I've been involved in this business now for over 20 years, and most of that time I've been working with AAGLA members. But yeah, so we're going to be, let's see here. There we go. Yeah, just to give people a kind of an overview, we're located right here in the San Gabriel Valley. Like I said, I've been here a long time. I'm actually in the same office now for over 20 years, and we focus on income property. And when we talk about income property, we're really trying to get much higher than normal cash flows, higher cap rates for people. Again, you know, Dan mentioned it, we're involved very much in 1031 exchanges. You know, probably 75% of our transactions are some form of 1031 exchange. Myself and my team are very, very well versed in all the ins and outs. And again, we work very closely with Bill Exeter. And so it's, you know, it's just an area that we're very well versed in, and we've done just about any kind of variation of a 1031 you can imagine. So if anyone has any questions or whatever, that's definitely an area that we can help you with. We're doing a lot of commercial properties. Again, we're trying to find income properties. A lot of the properties we're doing off market. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that probably 50% of all of the commercial real estate transactions in America are actually off market. And there's a lot of interesting reasons why that is. But we have, well, again, I've been in this business for many, many, many years. I've built up relationships with REITs and other types of private equity portfolios, et cetera. And so we have access to a lot of properties that you're never going to see on MLS, LoopNet, CoStar, or any of these other markets. And that's something that's really kind of our secret sauce. Also, we do a lot of investing in IRAs for clients. We just did a transaction yesterday for a client that wanted to buy a property inside of an IRA. And we can do that through Exeter, and there's other IRA companies as well, but Exeter now offers that service as well. Here's my team, and I got a great group of guys here. They're all really well trained. They really know their stuff. What's interesting, and again, we're in the San Gabriel Valley, so it's hard to get around this, but these guys, we cover just about any language you can think of in Southeast Asia. So kind of joke, Mac and I are the only guys that only speak English. The other guys are very fluent in Cantonese, Mandarin, Korean, etc. So we have got everything covered. So again, our mission statement is to provide our clients with above average stable cash flow. And I should underline stable, because we're dealing a lot with people who have had property here in LA, and look, we should all be kissing the ground we walk on. It's been a wonderful run. Anyone who's owned property here for any period of time, you know, it's just been great here. But there comes a point in time where, you know, your equity's built up. You get a little bit, you know, overwhelmed with all the problems with tenants and that kind of stuff. And they just want to move that equity into something and increase their cash flow and just have stable income where they don't have, you know, the headaches. We call it tenants, taxes, and toilets. So a lot of the transactions we do are people like that. And just a quick example, how I got into this was back in about 2004. I had an elderly couple. They owned a building here in San Gabriel Valley. They really wanted to sell it because they said, look, we're older. We can't manage it the way we would like to, and we just want to do something different, but we don't want to pay the taxes. So that's when I learned two things. One, how to do 1031 exchanges, and then also how to find replacement property for them that made sense, because again, they really didn't want the management headaches. Okay, well, again, our focus here is on finding markets that are stable and that have properties that make sense for what we're trying to do. And we've really focused on a few markets that we've been working in for quite a while. The types of properties we're dealing with are generally fully renovated or brand new development. They have tenants and leases in place. We have very good quality local management. Again, the markets we're going to be talking about today, we've been dealing with for years now, and we've done literally hundreds of properties in these different markets. So we've developed really good boots in the ground, so to speak, relationships, so that when we sell a property to somebody, we know that there's going to be a good property manager available or management company to help you out. And so again, that's something we've been doing for a long time and have that in place. Yeah, just to give you here, you can see we do a lot of single family properties, believe it or not. Right now, the cap rates in single family are superior to what you're finding in multifamily. So there's a lot of cases where we'll put together a portfolio. In fact, we're doing a portfolio right now of 40 properties in Marietta, single family, for a large exchange. And one client is buying that whole portfolio. So we're getting better cap rates on a portfolio of single family than you're going to get on a multifamily. You can see here that there's manufactured homes. We do a lot of those in Houston, Texas area and some other markets around Southern Texas. We're doing a lot of triple net lease properties. We'll be talking about that with Eddie. And we're also doing multifamily. We actually have access to some very nice properties here in LA that are being built by a developer that are like 2 to 4 units, if someone's interested. But truthfully, right now, multifamily anywhere in the country is really tough right now. There's a lot of money chasing multifamily. So it is really hard to find properties that make sense.
Hey, Rusty, do you guys get into DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, REITs, as a 1031 alternative?
We don't directly anymore. I used to do a lot of those, and we've kind of shifted. That part of my business, I actually transferred to some other guys that worked for me for many years. So if someone does really want a DST, we can move them over to them, and they would have access to that. Right now, I'm personally focusing on the real estate market.
Got it. So you can offer the option if somebody wanted to look at that when they contract with you.
They can, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
And then here, we're just showing you that we do listings for clients here in LA. When we do that, we do a whole set up with a video. And if you go into actually, we have a YouTube channel now. If you go into YouTube and just type in TFS Properties, you'll see our stuff on there. And then go to the bottom of it, and there'll be videos that we did of listings, so you can see what we put together. They're really good. Clinton, that works for me, does an excellent job on the marketing on that. And we have a very large database of investors. So if there's anything that you have to offer to sell, we have a lot of access. And anything we've done recently, well, in the last several years, is sold almost immediately. So that says it all right there. Okay, so let's talk about what we're all here for today. And we did a seminar, well, actually, to go back, probably around September, August last year, we started seeing things change around. You know, we'd been under the lockdown for months at that point, and we started to see things happening. And you know, a lot of markets like Texas and some of the Midwest markets started really perking up. And so we saw that pattern kind of playing out some more. We put a seminar together in the Big Shift back in December and put some data together. Since then, we've put a lot more information together, which you're going to hear today. But basically, you're seeing that the dense downtown areas, people are just don't want to be there anymore, right? They don't want to park and walk with a bunch of people through the elevator up into a crowded building with a bunch of offices. A lot of people are working from home now. We all know what's happening there, but there's a definite shift in you know, just where people want to be, both for work and also for where they live. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Here's some photos we took just in the last 60 days. This is here in the Pasadena market, and these are a bunch of retail places. And truthfully, I mean, I drive through Pasadena all the time as I come into work, and it's a little bit shocking. You know, there's a lot of stuff here that's empty, you know, restaurants, retail shops. Here's a picture downtown, Old Town Pasadena. And Eddie, you're familiar with this market. What have you been seeing here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a Pasadena boy through and through, born and raised. And what used to be a very high traffic flow area has now just almost turned like a ghost town. It's quite sad and scary. Even in this picture alone, where you see that red signage from commercial real estate brokerage, that used to be a very popular ice cream store. And sad to say, it's one of the businesses that went underwater during pandemic. So just a total transformation of what this place used to be.
Yeah, it's sad. And you take like a restaurant, which Pasadena is really well known for restaurants. There's a bunch that have closed down, and Ed, you've got a bunch of guys in the restaurant business. If you just have a small restaurant, how many people would work there?
Yeah, great question. In a small mom and pop brick and mortar, you can have anywhere between 10 to 20 people if you include both front of house and back of house. One of my clients works for Katsuya. That's more of a 40 to 50 people operation. And you can imagine how many jobs had to be furloughed during the pandemic. So huge impact. And that's just from 2 restaurants. So.
Yeah, and it's not just furloughed. There's a lot that are like closed. They're done.
Yeah.
Which is sad. So here's a slide of apartments. You know, again, driving around, we actually drove down California Boulevard here in Pasadena. And, you know, a year ago, if you saw a for rent sign up, that was unusual. And if it was up for maybe a week, and that rent sign was gone. Today, you see rent signs all over the place. Actually, I've not seen this many for rent signs since back in 2009 and 10. So pretty dramatic shift of, you know, just people not renting that used to. And again, when you look at the job market, you know, a lot of these guys that were working and that would normally be renters here, you know, they're struggling. They're out of business. They're not getting jobs they could have, and they're just not able to pay the rent. So there's a big change in that. So this is a wonderful chart that we found, and it's compliments of Marcus and Millichap. And what you're looking at here is migration patterns. And so the red dots are areas that are shrinking. People are leaving those areas, and you can see the little chart in the bottom left there explaining that. The green large dots are areas that are growing, and they're strong, very strong growth in those markets. And then the orange and the yellow are kind of in between. But again, you can see, you know, the Southern California area for the most part is shrinking. Believe it or not, if you go to Inland Empire, there's a lot of growth down there. It's just exploding. In fact, I just had a client yesterday call me up. He does a lot of property down there where he buys land and gets it entitled for development, and then he'll sell it to you know, the big guys. Anyway, he had a meeting with D.R. Horton yesterday morning, And because they had called him up and said, look, we really need some property. What do you got? He took him out, showed him all the different pieces of land he had, which was quite a bit. And D.R. Horton said, you know what, we're going to take all of it. And so he just unloaded a big portfolio of vacant land that was all set up to build on. And that was literally just yesterday. So the activity in Inland Empire right now is huge. But, you know, again, you can see that the green dots are cities like a lot of them in Texas. I mean, everywhere in Texas is booming. Florida is just absolutely booming. The whole South is really growing right now. Now, just to kind of do a bit of a deep dive in some of this stuff, here's San Francisco. And I'm sure you've all been hearing San Francisco is really struggling right now. We're showing you a chart here of the housing market dropping. Rents are dropping. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of problems there. I have a client that's trying to sell a multi-use building right in the main part of San Francisco. And boy, he's really sweating bullets right now. They've had it in contract, out of contract. They're just not getting it sold. And even when they're lowering the price. So it's a tough market up there right now. But here's an interesting chart on the left. And what we're seeing here is a cumulative rent for 30 major metropolitan areas in the United States. And so the dark orange line is the core part of the city, which again, this would be like downtown LA or downtown Seattle or whatever it is. And you can see that rents are dropping. But what's really interesting, and this is something we didn't realize when we first did this back in December, but since then it's become kind of obvious, is that a lot of people are leaving downtown core areas and moving to the suburbs or moving to outlying areas. And it kind of makes sense. You know, there's a lot of people that you know, again, they were going to work downtown and they don't want to go there anymore. They don't need to. They've realized that they could work for their home. And if they're going to be working from home, why not be in a bigger space? The other thing I've realized, and again, I have 6 kids and 5 of them live in the LA area here. And I hear from them, you know, you figured that there's a lot of young people that were renting and they had nice apartments or whatever. But when this whole lockdown happened, they suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this place. I mean, what are you finding with your friends, Eddie?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, they're all kind of leaving their apartment buildings and pivoting over to either their own single family residence or bunkering down with a couple friends, leaving these high density areas, so, or going out of state.
Exactly. So again, you know, people want to get into a bigger space and a bigger area where it's just not, you're not so crowded. Again, on the chart on the left here, and I do apologize. It's kind of hard for you guys to read this. Just so you know, if you do want to get a copy of these slides, you can email us at info@tfsproperties.com and we'll gladly email you these. And they're all linked in so you can actually go through and see the actual articles that they're taken from. But on the left, you're just showing the major markets where the rents have dropped. San Francisco is number 1, and it kind of goes down from there. This next slide is just showing articles we've pulled on rental prices dropping. And again, it seems to vary quite a bit depending on the neighborhood you know, that you're in LA. But there's definitely a shift here in rents. So here's a quote we found from Rich Barton, the founder of Zillow. And I'm going to read it to you folks. The US real estate market is starting to show signs of a big reshuffle as people move to homes with more privacy and space to make it easier to work from home. I believe we're on the cusp of a big reshuffle. I'm sure I don't need to explain it to you because we all experience it. We spend an average of 9 more hours a day at home. Zoom meetings are changing the way families perceive space and privacy. Home offices are in high demand. Backyards are more attractive than parks and gyms. And look, if you guys think about it, I'm sure you're all seeing examples of this. I'm going to give you a great example. I live in Glendale in one of the nicer streets, and we're at one end of the block. There's a guy down at the other end of the block that has a very large property. It's well over half an acre, and he did a magnificent job. You know, he's got water features in the back, and it's just a great property to hang out in. And it went for $4 million just in the last month. And I was kind of shocked because you guys know Glendale, for something to go for $4 million, I haven't even heard of a price that high before. It's making me think maybe I should look at selling my house. Anyway, yeah, and so it's a perfect example. You know, you figure some executive or someone that has, you know, the wherewithal, they're thinking, look, I'm going to be spending a lot more time at home. I might as well be in a great place. And so we're hearing all kinds of stories like that. And, you know, you're just seeing a lot of shifting around because of all that kind of stuff. Here again, I apologize, it's kind of small, but if you look at the left, you can see that we've got different cities here. If you look at LA sort of in the middle there, you can see the dark line where the rents are dropping. And again, this is the core market. And you look around the outlying areas, which is the light orange colors, and that's the suburban areas. And so it's happening all over, not just here in LA. And on the right, you're seeing cities where they're going up, the rents are going up, and these have a big influx of people. But again, these are mostly cities that are not highly dense the way the big cities are. And again, if you guys really want to get copies of all this, just email us at info@tfsproperties.com, and also go onto our YouTube channel. You just go into YouTube and type in TFS Properties and it'll come up. And we have a lot of this stuff on there and also on our website. Just one more chart showing rents dropping. You can see that the bottom one there is San Francisco, then New York, and it kind of goes up from there. One other kind of interesting example, this is the Metropolis, downtown LA. And this is a building that's, real high end, real, glitzy kind of deal. And this is a condo in there that sold back in February of 2017 for $938. A year ago, Zillow showed this as being worth about 1.1 million. And right now it's on the market for $788,000. And that's current right now. And they're having trouble selling it. Eddie, what are you finding with your friends?
Yeah, I remember when this Metropolis building just rolled out and finished construction. It was right by USC off the 110 freeway. And when they opened the doors to buyers, a single condo, 1 bedroom, 2 bath, sold for just over 900,000. Earlier this year, pre-pandemic, or last year, pre-pandemic, the Zillow's estimate, for what it's worth, evaluated it at just over $1 million. However, I had a buddy who told me that they bought a condo that was in this complex that once sold for 700,000. He got it for 450,000. And we decided to pull up some other comps on title. And again, a 1 bedroom, 2 bath initially sold for 938,000. You could look it up in public records. It just sold for 700,000 plus and some change. So yeah, it's a testament to the mass exodus of people from high density areas.
Yeah, and this is, for you guys that are familiar with it, I know from my kids, because we used to go downtown a lot and a lot of these new areas. 20 years ago, downtown LA was, we would never go down there. But believe me, in the last 10 years, there's been such a huge upswing in millennials and people moving downtown. Became much more common for people to go into some nice condo or some nice apartment building. There's tons of cafes. There was all kinds of great restaurants. Yeah, the amount of activity and the upswing in that market was dramatic, and up till a year ago. And then since then, and again, we all understand this, there's been a big shift where people don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with other people. They don't want to be packed into elevators. They don't want to be at crowded street corners. They don't want to be in crowded parking lots, any of that kind of thing. And so big 180-degree shift from downtown LA from what it was a year ago. And it's a very similar pattern to any major metropolis right now.
Hey, Rusty, have you guys seen any data about whether this whole thing will turn around other than coming from Mayor Garcetti? Are people ever going to come back to the urban cities, or are the predictions really that this is a permanent shift that we're looking at, and work habits are definitely going to be changing for a long time to come?
Yeah, you know what? I can't imagine it changing anytime quick, even with the vaccine. Now they're telling us the vaccine may not be, as effective as what we'd like it to be. And I don't know. There's so much conflicting information. And let's face it, this last year, we've been hit with one thing after another that none of us expected in any way, shape, or form. So I think it'll come back someday, but who knows? If we have other variations of COVID, we're going to have a COVID 20 someday, right? And so I think people have got it stuck in their mind that they got to be careful going forward. And so I just don't know. I think people will get vaccinated or whatever, and it'll calm down quite a bit. But I haven't really come across anything that's giving us anything that really we can count on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you know, where I'm sitting today in New York City, I know Mayor de Blasio is predicting that people eventually come back to the city, which nobody believes. And, you know, there's actually been, and he's been holding his hat on the fact that there's been an uptick in apartment rentals recently. But what people have found is people moving out of the luxury expensive ones into the cheaper rent controlled buildings. That's why there's more leasing activity going on. But there are not people coming back to the city today. And in fact, in areas outside of the city, like in New Jersey and Connecticut, in rural areas, that real estate's booming. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, my stepson lives up in Santa Ynez, and he has a nice little ranch up there and growing his grapes and everything. But that market up there is just exploded, you know. So any of these outlying areas, and I actually was in Montana a few months ago, and Park City, places in Utah, places, all those places are just exploding. It's just crazy. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be a long time, to be honest, about downtown areas recovering. I mean, I think a lot of people, there'll be a lot of young people that had wanted to be in a downtown area, and now they can get stuff cheaper. And so you'll get some people inflowing from that, but I don't think it's going to give us much of a recovery. All right, just to give you some other interesting data. This is something I learned years ago about U-Haul, and U-Haul is a great way to tell us what's going on out there. And so what we did is we took the rates for going from Los Angeles to Austin. So if you were to rent, you can see a little truck there in the bottom, and you're planning on moving and taking your gear to Austin, how much would it cost you? So you can see down here that it would cost you $3,500. If you were in Austin and you decided to move to LA and rent a U-Haul truck, guess what? It's only $711. I mean, literally 20% of the price to come back to Los Angeles than it costs to go to Austin. So what's that telling us, folks? It's telling us that there's a lot of people going to Austin, and they've got all these trucks sitting there, and they got to get them back to LA. So they're renting them out cheap. And, you know, so it gives us a really good picture in real time. Again, this is real current, like a week ago. And you can go on their website and check this out between different markets. Here's another one. If you were to take a truck from Los Angeles to Houston, it would cost you almost $3,800. Again, if you were going from Houston back to Los Angeles, you would have to pay, almost $1,100. Next slide, we're showing New York to Indianapolis. And here you're seeing it being about $1,400 for a truck. It's not as far. But if you were to go from New York back to Indianapolis, it would only cost you $550, almost a third of what the cost would be. And another market we took, okay, New York to Tampa, for example. If you were to go and take that rental, it would cost you about $3,200. And again, if you were to go from Tampa back to New York, and I apologize, there's a lag sometimes in my slides. There we go. It's only $600. Again, it's 1/5 the cost to go north rather than to go south. And it's just for fun, if you guys are checking in a market, you can always do that, but it really gives us a good picture of what's happening. So again, you know, you look at our map again here and you can see what's going on. These green dots are the markets, and the yellow dots actually also are the markets that you are expecting growth and that you want to be in. There we go. So here's a slide we're going to show. This is a property that we just did like in the last couple of months. It was actually a client of ours that had had an old time restaurant for many, many years right beside the Santa Anita racetrack. And he actually sold the restaurant portion and kept the building and leased it to the tenant. And early last year, he had his tenant call him up and say, "I'm mailing you the keys. That's it. I'm shutting down. I can't survive this market." And so he got the keys, had an empty building and had to do something. And luckily there is a developer locally there in Arcadia that really wanted this property for development, and he got it sold. And then this is what we did with that portfolio. Eddie, tell them a little bit about what we did here.
Yeah, so client sold the restaurant, as Rusty had mentioned, and they expressed interest doing a 1031 exchange into out-of-state properties where they knew that the cash flow would be higher. One of the geographic areas that they identified and wanting to be in was the Lake Tahoe, Reno area. Rusty and I were really familiar with Reno when we did this transaction, having visited just about a year ago. And those of you who may or may not know this already, Reno is poised to become the largest industrial park in the entire world. I mean, ranging from the Tesla Gigafactory to Google, Facebook, Apple, they all have data centers there. And you wouldn't know it just by driving through Reno. And so once we identified the market, we sourced our entire network and found a multifamily project, brand spanking new. It was a 12 unit, and we locked it in below asking price. What we found out during the due diligence process was that the majority of these tenants actually worked at the Tesla Gigafactory, and Tesla actually would have a charter bus come and pick up these employees and escort them from downtown Reno, where this property was located at, straight to the Gigafactory, which was a nice service and gave us even more confidence about our thoughts of this being a very bullish market for the long run. And so client was very ecstatic to get a brand new development that was backed by builders warranties for a tranche of their exchange. Now, with the remainder of the portfolio, we decided to go to some of our own internal TFS product, and we bought 13 manufactured homes in Houston, Texas at a 12% cash flow. And so now the client went from one single restaurant out in Arcadia, right in our backyard, to a portfolio of 25 rental properties, completely passive, and they increased their cash flow to $200,000 in net income after all expenses. The portfolio was acquired for just over 2.8 million, and that makes it a 7.5% cap rate approximately. So client was very happy to get out of that restaurant building and diversify.
You guys see people favoring fixers or people wanting to get properties that are already developed, brand spanking new?
You know, we're really focusing more on, like I said, brand new product when we're out of state, because out of state it's tough to manage if you have to do fix ups and stuff. Once in a while we do a value add kind of project, but for the most part we're doing stuff that's really new or totally renovated very recently, so we don't have all the management headaches.
And then when you're going out of state, Rusty, how do people manage these properties? You know, if they're here in California, do you have management companies you hook them up with? What are they doing to get these properties operating?
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned that earlier, that a lot of these markets we've been doing business in for a long time, and we've developed some really good relationships for the management side of it. So we don't want to sell you a property that we don't have good management. And we also want to sell you a property where we're not going to have a lot of management headaches, because again, if we're dealing with a brand new property or recently renovated property, you know, we do very thorough inspections before we close on any deal, because we don't want to have any headaches down the road. So we really have worked hard to make sure that's in place for you.
And I'm not sure if you guys are going to get into this, but you know, I know there's a whole timing and a whole scenario that you have to go through to successfully execute a 1031 exchange. You get a certain number of days to identify properties, then you have a certain number of days to complete the exchange. You know, what should people be doing in terms of timing when they're thinking about getting into a 1031 exchange? Should they identify before they list, identify before they sell, ask for long escrows? You know, what are some of your strategies that you advise people in this area?
That is a really good question. And the worst thing in the world is having somebody call up and they'd say, in fact, we're dealing with somebody right now that we got him called in the last week, and there's like, this Friday is the end of his 45 days to identify property. He hasn't found anything. And so we had not been working with him before. He just called in, you know, wanting some product. So we can do it, but it's a mad scramble. The best thing I tell people is, look, in fact, we're dealing with a guy right now. He's got a property under contract, commercial building over in Santa Monica, and he went under contract, but his contract's long. He's not going to close on it till probably June. And so I'm saying, look, we're just now getting to the point in time while you're in escrow that we should start looking at properties. And before you close escrow, we should actually have whatever properties we're planning exchanging into all set up and under contract, so that we can get that closed. And quite often, if we're working with the client early enough in the cycle, you know, we can get all your properties closed before the end of the 45-day period, because we don't want to go through that 45-day period and then have a problem. And look, we've all been through this. Just yesterday, we had one of these heartfelt calls with a client where we have a portfolio of properties that we were buying from somebody we hadn't dealt with before, and a bunch of these properties under inspection. And that's another key point. We don't want to close on anything until you've inspected every single unit with a professional inspector, because things come up that none of us ever expected. So in this case, there's some problems with some of the properties that none of us anticipated, because initially they had showed us properties that were in great shape, and it was a portfolio we're buying. But these other properties that were part of the portfolio we hadn't looked at yet, a bunch of them have roof problems, et cetera. So lesson learned, luckily we're inspecting everything, and we'll probably have to renegotiate it. But the point is that we're past the 45 days on this, and so we can't go back and change it. So you really want to get early in this game. And like I said, the best time is when you go into escrow. Most people are going to have a 60-day escrow, and that's when we want to be really active with you, looking for replacement property, so that when your escrow is closed, we have everything all set up. That's the ideal scenario. And then we can get everything closed well within your 180 period. And if anything comes up, in due diligence, we have time to change properties and make sure that we get you in good quality stuff before the end of your 45 days. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so just so people are clear, you get 45 days to identify a property. You can identify up to 3 of them. You need to kind of lock them up with your real estate agent, but there's always outs during the time after you lock them up. And then you have 180 days to close on the property that you're purchasing on. Correct?
Yeah, and again,
Yep.
now just to kind of clarify one thing there too, the 3 property rule is one rule, okay? There's an additional rule that we usually use in our scenarios, which is called the 200% rule. And under the 200% rule, the IRS does not care how many properties you identify. And again, like you're looking right in front of you here, this is actually a 14 property portfolio according to the IRS. So as long as we're under 200% of the property value of what you sold, we can do this transaction no problem. So if somebody sells a building for $1 million, we can identify up to $2 million worth of replacement property, and it doesn't matter how many properties we do. We could do 1, we could do 20, and the number doesn't matter as far as the number of properties. It matters the total value. So that's a different rule than the 3 property rule.
Got it. I guess if you're in a time crunch, Rusty, you could always invest in a DST at the last minute. But with those, you basically lose control. You're basically a passive investor in real estate, and the management company takes whatever fees they're going to take. And assume the management company's making a lot of money on those. So it may not be the optimal route to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the investor, what they're trying to do. But my rule of thumb is, and I've been very much involved, I've even helped companies put DSTs together. I found source properties for them, and they've put it into a DST, et cetera. As a general rule of thumb, you're paying a premium of about 10% on that property when you're doing a 1031 exchange through a DST, because the DST syndicator is going to put a bunch of fees and things in there their fees are on top of the closing costs. So if a property is, say, $5 million, there's probably $500,000 worth of fees and things on top of that. So unless they buy that property below market, you're in a negative situation from day one, and they're counting on the fact that over the next 5 or 10 years, that property value goes up and it overcomes that 10% premium. And some people, if the right property for them, that works, but you're not going to see a huge upside on those properties.
Got it.
And you're going to see much lower cash flow than what we're showing you here. And that's why I'm really focusing on this, because I find you've got more liquidity here. You have control. You can sell any of these properties whenever you want, and you have a much higher cash flow as well.
We have a question for Eddie here, if you don't mind me asking Eddie. Someone's asking about whether you have any testimonials or feedback from buyers who may have moved out of the city, made investments out of the city, and what you're hearing from them. Are they happy with those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, there's twofold. There's the people that are actually physically moving there, and they're quite ecstatic. I mean, a lot of them got relocated from California to areas such as Texas. And, when homes are a quarter of the price as to what they are here in LA, quality of life is exponentially increased. So long as you can get over the weather factor. I can't personally, but for them, it wasn't really an issue. On the investment vehicle side, I mean, look, California cap rates are at 3 to 4%. So are interest rates. it's going to take you putting down 50% in order for you to break even. And one bad maintenance repair is going to take you into negative waters. Nobody wants to be in that position. And that's the reality of what the market is looking like today. Contrary to California, our out-of-state products are anywhere in that 6 to 12% cap rate range. So if you do want to leverage at 3 to 4% interest rate, you're not only going to comfortably service the debt, you're going to get positive cash flow on top of that. That's a defensive mindset that we've instilled in all of our investors, and we've implemented that for years now, even before the pandemic. And those guys that have made those transactions are building equity comfortably right now, and not really worrying about what's happening here in California. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, are those cap rates pre or post management company fees?
Post, net of all capital expenditures, including management. And we even put a maintenance factor and a vacancy factor as a stress test, just to make sure our investors are prepared for those incidents, because it's rental property at the end of the day, and you're going to have those capital expenditures.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive and very conservative.
Exactly.
Well, good. So let's go through and we'll talk about some of the markets we've been focusing on. Houston is a market that we love. We're negotiating on several deals right now. We have a lot of activity going on here. The thing that we do the most in Houston actually are these manufactured homes. So we have an arrangement with one of the larger owners of parks. You can see all these red dots. Whoop, I get some pop up here. You can see all these red dots. And those are all parks that we've been dealing with. They're all over the submarkets there of the Houston area. And so what they do is they will go in, buy these parks, put in the units, and rent them out to tenants. And then we have investors come in and buy the individual units. And these units can be anywhere from $40,000 to $70,000, depending on the age of it and the park that it's in, et cetera. The picture you're seeing here, we actually sold this park out totally, and everybody was very impressed with it. It's a nice park. You can see that it's gated. That house on the left that you see is actually the management office. So they have full-time management in place. It's very clean. It's much different than what a lot of people think that these parks are. And especially in the Midwest, they're a lot more common, and there's a lot more, it's a lot more okay for people basically to live there. Yeah, and you can see some pictures here. A lot of them are very nice. Especially the newer ones, or any ones that we're doing have been renovated within the last 5 years. So they're in very good shape, even if they are older. Just to give you some numbers, if you look on the left here, you can see this is, in fact, that park we just showed you. Most of the units in there were within the last, 3 or 4 years old. And they sold at $53,500. Based on that, again, if you want to walk through the numbers, the gross income was $1,000. Part of the fee goes to the lot rent. And that's one thing I should make clear to everybody. You're actually buying just the physical building. You're not buying the land in this case. And so the land is going to have a long-term 30-year lease with a 15-year option to renew. So you don't have to worry about, the property going away on you. But you have that leased lot to pay. And so the tenant will be paying $1,000. Out of that, you can see at the top there that $325 goes to the land lease. That varies a little bit depending on the park or whatever, but in this case, that's what it was. Insurance, taxes, basic stuff. We also have a maintenance program in place, which means that for $38 a month, anything that goes wrong in that building, they cover. And one thing that everybody hates is being nickel and dimed to death, on their property management stuff. So in this case, you don't have to worry about it. It's a straight $38 a month. And if your air conditioner goes out, or your hot water heater does, or there's screen that gets ripped, all that kind of stuff, it's going to get all fixed under that $38. So people like that a lot. And so your net after all those expenses, you can see at the bottom, in this case, it was 11.5%. And that's pretty typical. Back in the old days, it's kind of like pre-COVID and post-COVID now. We used to do a lot of property tours, and they're really fun. We take a group of investors out there and they get to tour the parks and see the properties and stuff. That's probably not going to happen for a little while. But if you are interested, again, if you go onto our YouTube channel, TFS Properties, there's a bunch of videos on there, and you can actually see some of the tours we did in the past. And again, we really enjoyed them. They're a lot of fun, but it might be a little while before we do that again. But we're not just doing manufactured homes. Eddie, why don't you tell them about this Popeyes that we did in Houston?
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, as you know, last 4 or 5 years, we were pretty active in the Houston market, still are active in the Houston market. So we've been able to navigate kind of which core areas are prime for commercial real estate. And this just so happens that we found a Popeyes brand new, straight from the developer on Bel Air Boulevard, which is one of the major retail thoroughfares of Houston, Texas proper. It's right off the freeway, and it was backed by a 15-year absolute triple net lease, which means that the tenant is responsible for every single maintenance expenditure, insurance, and also paying your property taxes, which is critical in Texas. That being said, the operator was one of the strongest Popeyes operators in the entire country, and paying that rent was very easy, especially during pandemic, where we had a drive-through component. And we've been kind of preaching fast food chains even before COVID-19, because even if Amazon took over in the entire retail space, they're not in the business of fast food. And so this was a very resilient asset during the pandemic, even before the pandemic. And clients very happy just holding on to this asset and getting good passive income. So.
Yep. A little more information on it here. And yeah, we were very happy with this asset.
Is everything doing okay in Houston after the storms they had and the big upsurge in energy prices? Any concerns from that standpoint?
No, I mean, we had broken pipes. That would happen. But luckily, the management company we were dealing with had a lot of spare parts. So they managed to get it, because right now, believe it or not, if you had a broken pipe, it's almost impossible to get it fixed. So luckily, our management team had a big supply of pipes, and they managed to get everything fixed, and they had their guys working literally 20 hours a day. But I just talked to a friend of mine yesterday in where was he? He's actually down in the Houston area, and they had a water problem. There's a 3-week waiting list to get somebody to come out and fix their pipes. But luckily, it wasn't one of our properties. So luckily, all our stuff, they did have problems because of frozen pipes, but they got through it. They're all up and running, and things are running smoothly now. That's good.
Got it.
But here we're showing you, this is a client of ours. He actually sold a building in Koreatown just over a year ago. We actually were lucked out and found him a real nice multifamily, and this is 20 units in Houston. Truthfully, right now, it's really hard to find product like this, very hard. But this one worked out really well. Our property guy, or our owner there, was very, very happy. And there's a location there. It was not that far from the main core of Houston. And that property is doing great right now. Look, all the rentals we're doing anywhere in Texas are just doing fantastic. We're having no problem renting things out whatsoever. This is just showing you in Houston, prices have gone up over the last year about 10%. And just to show you some other stuff, right now we're in the middle of negotiating a medical building, a triple net lease. We didn't put the name on here because we don't want anyone to know, we're in the middle of negotiating. This is 100% off market. The company that's in there, medical company, they didn't want to list it. They just wanted to have it done privately. So it worked out to our advantage. But we're negotiating that. And if it all works out the way we think it's going to work out, this is going to be a 7.4% cap rate on a brand new 10-year lease with a very good company that's in there with a medical clinic. So we really like medical a lot. We actually have a lot of medical product lined up down the road because, again, when we've gone through all this, I mean, we did medical before. We did Fresenius and DaVita, which are kidney dialysis centers. We've done some other stuff too in the past, and all that kind of product right now having to do with medical. As we all know, we may go through economic issues, but people are still going to go to the doctor, and it's either going to be funded by your insurance, by the government, or by self-pay, but people are definitely going to go. So we're big fans of that. So another market we do a lot in is Beaumont, Texas. Beaumont is about an hour and a half east of Houston. And why do we like Beaumont? Well, you can see in this picture, there's a big port here, and it's one of the major ports in maybe even the world, actually, for oil. And this area has got a lot of oil refineries, and you can kind of see the top there, actually. That's where all the refineries are down there, and they're building more. So they're actually building the largest oil refinery in the entire world in Beaumont. So the market there is very, very strong. You can see here in this map that it's, here's Houston there. Got cut off in here, but there's a big kind of inland bay here that it's located on. And that's that bay there is being turned into a deep water port for super tankers right now. So again, this whole area, the amount of construction and work is just booming. And it's not going to go away. Even with all the things we're talking about green energy, this is not based on oil drilling. This is based on oil refining. And there's every kind of facility here for making all kinds of stuff out of oil, like plastics and agriculture. They use a lot of oil for fertilizers. So it's all right there. So this is a booming little market. We're dealing with a group, or actually a couple here in LA, that has a whole portfolio of over 100 homes in this market. You can see pictures here of some of the ones we've done. They're actually nice homes. And they average about $150,000 each, believe it or not. And they went in, they totally renovated these homes. They've owned them for a while, and they want to liquidate some of them. So again, if we have the deal to liquidate some of them for them. If you're interested, these are real nice cash flowing. They're probably around an 8% cap rate. If you get it financed, they're probably going to end up being around 10, 11, 12% cash flow. This is just showing the numbers here, that if you bought one all cash, it would be about an 8.5% cap rate. If you got it financed with 35% down, depending on what kind of loan you get, the cash on cash return will be higher. And again, these average about $150,000. And we have a bunch of them under contract just in the last week from some clients, part of their 1031 exchanges.
That's not even a down payment on a condominium in Los Angeles.
Oh, I know. It's crazy, huh? I mean, look, I've been out there a bunch of times, and you'd be amazed. You're getting like a nice big lot, maybe 10,000 square foot, 12,000 square foot lot, probably a 2,400 square foot house, or, it's usually 1,800 or more, the size of the house. And they're nice. They're older, but they've all been fully renovated. But yeah, it's amazing to see the prices. And there's appreciation there. It's gone up 10% in the last year. And when they rent, I mean, I swear, I've been there where we looked at a house that they just finished fixing up on a Saturday, and we came back on Sunday and somebody was moving in.
Wow.
I mean, the job market there is hard to believe until you've been there.
Hey.
All the hotels are full because they have trouble finding a place to rent.
Hey, Rusty, we had a question submitted beforehand from Barb, and she was acknowledging that the cap rates are great, but how often are people also looking for looser regulatory restrictions, like to get out of the rut we find ourselves in Los Angeles or the state of California, where there are just so many housing regulations? Does that impact people's investment decisions and areas that they're looking at?
Absolutely. And look, Dan, this better than anybody. It's like,
I know, I'm asking for Barb.
I don't even want to get into this subject, right? It's like,
Put me out of my misery
here. And it's scary to see, it's not loosening up. And so we don't know where it's going to go. So I have a lot of people that are, they want to move their equity somewhere else, or at least part of their equity, right? Because they're thinking, look, I've got a bunch of properties, we have a lot of clients, they own 5, 10 buildings here in LA, and they're kind of going, you know what, maybe it's time for me to diversify and get some of my equity out of here because of all the problems. And look, I own property in Texas myself, and you guys, to evict someone, it's scary how easy it is.
Just padlock their door.
Yeah, well, I've literally seen it where the sheriff shows up and he stands there and waits for the guys to get their stuff out. And he goes, look, you got so many hours to get out of here, or we're taking it out for you, literally.
I mean, it doesn't take 6 months in Texas?
No, it's you get them out of there within 30 days. And the other COVID issue, because there is this moratorium having to do with COVID-19. If you're a tenant in Texas, you have to go into the judge and prove to the judge that you have a COVID problem, or he still evicts you. Right? The onus is on the tenant to prove that, they've tested positive, or I don't know what else they have to do, but so far we haven't had a problem with the COVID-19 issues there at all. So it's a whole different world. And look, I deal with this all the time. People don't realize the outlier is Los Angeles, not the rest of the country. The rest of the country is landlord friendly. And it's really markets like LA and New York and San Francisco where it's the opposite.
Yeah, Rusty, Texas sounds like a science fiction novel to me.
Well, you need to get out more. Get out of New York and get out of LA and start traveling around, and you'll be shocked to see the difference. And you know, the Midwest is a whole different world. I mean, it's just amazing. Gosh.
Someone's asking about Denver. You have any thoughts on Denver?
Oh, I mean, Denver, I have a buddy of mine that's a realtor there, and that market's booming, and it's a strong market. And as you know, a lot of people have been going there just for the, you know, cannabis stuff or whatever, and the amount of stuff going on there is really good. I personally haven't done anything in Denver. We did do a triple net lease property. Where was it? Eddie's Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, yeah.
Yeah, about a year ago. But yeah, it's a good, strong market. I mean, look, it's a big country and we can't be experts on everything. But yeah, Denver is, and if you go back to that chart we showed you earlier, it's a growing area. It's definitely strong right now.
We also had a question about Dallas, the
Yeah.
Fort Worth area.
We did a bunch of transactions, and I even bought some property there myself a couple of years ago. Right now, it's really hard to find stuff there because it's so many people moving in there. It's really heated up actually. And so we've been trying to find stuff in Dallas lately, and it's just been really hard to get numbers to work. But it's a very strong market. Same with Austin. Those markets have really been bid up quite a bit. But there's still upside. I have a client right now who just went to Austin, and looks like we're going to do a very large building with him. It's like a $15 million deal. But they weren't quite as concerned about the cap rates as some people. They just wanted to buy a good asset in Austin. So those are great markets. But if you're trying to get higher cap rates, it's going to be tough, especially in multifamily.
Got it. And for people that really aren't familiar with 1031 exchanges, Rusty and Eddie, can you explain, how the escrow works in a 1031 exchange? You just can't go to some escrow company. You need what's called an accommodator, right? And I think I know the answer to my follow-up question. Are there accommodators that you guys like to work with and recommend?
Yeah, and just to disclose that I'm a part owner actually of Exeter Exchange. So we use Bill Exeter a lot. I know he's done some talks for you, and he's excellent. He used to run Chicago Title's division for 1031 exchanges, and then when he left there, we went together and he started a new company of his own. But he's got a lot of experience, and he's very good for information if you need any. He'll walk you through scenarios, and we use him all the time actually for helping clients because he really knows his stuff. But there's other good accommodators out there as well, but they're the one we use the most.
But explain how they fit into 1031 exchanges, why you need an accommodator, or there's actually two escrows. You have an escrow company, and then the escrow company gives the money over to the accommodator. At least I think that's what happened in my case. And then the accommodator actually purchases the property that you're going after, right?
Well, yes and no. So first of all, when you go into escrow, you have to tell the escrow that you want to do a 1031 exchange. So very, very important. You have to have the paperwork done prior to closing escrow, because once that escrow closes, they're going to issue your check and a 1099, and that's it. There's no way out of getting the tax bill. So if you have it all set up correctly before it closes, they're going to wire the money directly to the accommodator. And I'm sure a lot of people out there have done IRA rollovers, and it's a very similar type of transaction. You can't touch the money. So the money goes from one escrow to the accommodator, just like it would go from one IRA company to another directly. And so it doesn't touch your bank account or your hands. So that's really important. And then once the money is at the accommodator, you now have 45 days to pick property. And that's what we call your ID period, or your identification period. And so you want to have everything picked that you're going to buy by the end of the 45 days. And then that gets recorded by the accommodator. And so that way, if the IRS ever audits you, they can see that you had it all done within the time frame, and the accommodator has the proof for that. And then you have an additional 135 days to actually close the escrow.
Well, thanks for that one, Rusty.
Yeah, very important to have all that set up ahead of time. Very important. All right, well, we'll keep going here. A few more things to show you. We do a lot of stuff in Indianapolis. We like that market a lot. The reason we like it is it's a very, very stable market. It doesn't go up a lot, but it doesn't go down a lot either. We've probably done over 150 transactions in Indianapolis over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's a market we're really familiar with. And here what we're doing mostly is these single family homes. These homes probably average, believe it or not, about $90,000 for a 1,000 square foot house or 1,200 square foot house. And they're very easy to rent, good cash flow. They've actually been appreciating pretty good over the last couple of years as well. So we've done quite a few of these, similar to what we talked about in Beaumont. Here's one that we did a little over a year ago. A client bought it for $80,000. And when you net out all the fees and everything, this one ended up being well over 9% cap rate. And that's after all the expenses. So we're doing a bunch of those. In the last year, actually, the market there has been appreciating. Again, Indianapolis is not an exciting market. It's not hitting the news. I mean, face it, when have you heard anything about Indianapolis other than Mike Pence came from there? But it's just real stable. We don't have to worry about it going down a lot. But on the other hand, it has been going up. Actually, lately, it's really perked up there quite a bit. And in fact, we're having, we just did a portfolio for a client. We have a client here that loves it. And they've been slowly selling off their properties here in LA, outside of LA actually, and moving the money to Indianapolis. And we've done well over 20 properties with them. But it's just, it's getting harder to find property there actually, because it's getting so heated up. We also have done triple net lease properties. This is one we did actually about 2 years ago. Great building. You can see all these are actually ambulances. So this was the second largest manufacturer of ambulances in America. Great tenant, 12-year lease, and good cash flow. We already talked about this one. This is when we did the property out of Arcadia. We talked about this one. Eddie, why don't you talk about this one? This is one that we have under contract right now.
Actually, we just closed on this one. Or are you talking about, I think you skipped the Popeyes in Riverside, but
oh,
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I was thinking that was the other Popeyes. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Talk about that one.
We like Popeyes. They absolutely crushed it last year. Once they introduced the chicken sales, sandwich sales have just exploded through the roof on all locations. But anyways, some of you guys asked about California product and whether or not we still believe in our great state of California. And the answer is yes. This deal was actually asking for a 4.5% cap rate, not 4 3/4, and we negotiated it to a 5% cap rate. So this type of cap rate is kind of a unicorn in the California market, but we were able to get it done. Same story, 15-year absolute triple net lease. Tenant would be responsible for all expenditures, including property taxes, which are very high in California, insurance, maintenance, etc. What I love about this property the most, outside of it being right next to McDonald's, is that it's right across the street from a school. When schools do open up again, I can only imagine this place getting even more busy than it already is. And just so you know, during the pandemic, there was 0 lapse in payments for this location. So client's very happy. We're actually in escrow for another fast food chain with the same client. It's a Raising Cane's, and that was asking for 4.4 million. I got it under contract for 4 million flat, and she's ecstatic about that deal, knowing that Amazon Fresh is going to be her neighbor in this retail center. So that was a home run of a deal, and we're going to close escrow in just about 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, so Eddie and his team are really good at finding these properties. Like I said, we have a lot of relationships with some developers. So you're buying quite often brand new product, brand new lease. And we're really looking for these long-term 10 to 20-year leases. This is another one Eddie just has under contract. This one's going to close when, Eddie?
Yeah, also about 3 weeks out. We're buying this from a REIT. It was negotiated from a 5.5% cap rate to a 6% cap rate. Just located right outside of Fort Worth, Texas. Basically, seller, same story, sold a triplex in South Central LA. They've been an active real estate investor, a multifamily investor in the LA market for the last 3 decades. And they were earning a 3.5% cap rate on that LA asset. And we did the exchange for them, quarterbacked the exchange, and got this property, which is just at a 6% cap rate. So instant cash flow left from doing the exchange.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we are busy. I mean, the market we're in right now is just crazy. I mean, the amount of transactions that we're seeing and we're involved in, I haven't seen this since back in 2000, say 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, it's really a wild market. So if you guys are thinking of doing anything, I would do it sooner than later, because like I said, things are just really hot right now, and things will change. I know we're kind of going a little bit long here. This is another deal that we did. A client sold a penthouse downtown LA. It was a rental. Eddie and his team actually represented the seller, sold it, put that into a portfolio of single-family homes, both in Indianapolis and in Texas. This client is really happy. Went from 42,000 to 115,000 net income. And Eddie, aren't we doing another transaction with them right now?
Yeah, exactly. So same story. We sold a property in Orange County for just over 1.1 million, and we're going to be doing another portfolio and increase the cash flow there. So almost identical situation and almost identical cash flow scenario.
Yeah, yeah. So we're really busy right now. Just so you know, we do these spreadsheets for clients, and I realize that this is a bit much for you guys to read right away, but we break it down showing you the property you're selling and go into the property you're buying and break down all the income and expenses and really give you a true net figure here so you really know what you're getting into.
Do you guys see things heating up because of this new proposition that was passed, Prop 19, which is going to increase property taxes to people's descendants when they inherit property? Are people just saying, screw it, I'm going to sell my property because my kids are going to have to pay more property taxes anyway?
Yeah, I mean, all these propositions that keep popping up that are detrimental to landlords is definitely scaring people. And as you know, California is the #1 place for all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, we have had I haven't had anyone call me up saying they're selling specifically because of that, but I definitely have had people calling me up saying, look, a combination of all these things is starting to get a little overwhelming. And so they're definitely looking at moving their equity. And again, we're going to these other markets where you don't have all these issues. You know, it's a whole different world out there.
Right. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we're getting more calls all the time, actually, especially in the last 2 months. Here's a property that our client lucked out on. They sold it to a developer in West LA early last year. They went into that Popeyes we showed you and then also manufactured homes. They're very happy. In this case, they had a relative living in there, so their rental income was practically nothing. But yeah, they're definitely happy with this transaction. So we're gonna, again, we just did a spreadsheet showing you how we did that. Here's another case real quick that we did. This is a property that was sold in Alhambra. And sorry, my slides are stuck here again. There we go. They sold a restaurant. Actually, these guys they really lucked out. They sold this restaurant in Alhambra. When was it, Eddie?
Just end of, or I'm sorry, 2019.
Right. So they lucked out big time, and they sold it out. And then we put them into Pizza Hut, and then some other portfolio of single family homes. So they're ecstatic right now. This portfolio is really performing, and they got out of an asset that today would definitely be giving them some headaches. But anyway, the point here is that we've got a lot of transactions happening. We've done a lot of these portfolios. Eddie, how much do we have under contract right now?
Man, it's been a pretty crazy month. I'm not gonna lie. You have me burning the midnight oil all the time these days, but it's okay. Point of the story is we have probably close to 60 single family homes out of state locked in under contract. In the net lease world, we have close to 4 to 5 different commercial properties, well over 10 million. And also we have, of course, this 40 mobile home portfolio located in California tied up. And we got that for 7.7 million at a 5.5% cap rate, which is significantly higher than what we're seeing in other multifamily assets here in California. So we're rocking and rolling, and I call this shotgun formation. I'm sending out LOIs left and right to secure a deal.
Yeah, so we're busy. This is the busiest I've ever seen it since back in 2006 and 7. So there's an old saying, you know, make hay while the sun shines. So if anybody's interested in doing any kind of transaction, now's the time to seriously look at it. And if you need any help, you know, call us up, you know, check with our team, contact us at info@tfsproperties.com, go on to our YouTube channel, and you can see stuff on there. Also, if you subscribe to it, which we'd like you to do, you're going to be getting updates on all this stuff. And whenever we list a property or sell something, we usually post something up there and you can see it. And with a lot of information on our website as well. So I guess, is there any other questions we should be covering? Or
yeah, you know, for the people that attended today, I'm sure a lot of them, their interest was piqued in contacting you. How do you guys get paid?
Well, we're a broker. So we're going to get paid by the, you know, whatever side of the transaction we're on. So it's generally the seller of the property is going to be the paying us a commission. If we're representing you and we're, you know, for the purchase, then you're not paying us anything. But we show you these different spreadsheets and different portfolios. If you call us up and say, look, I've got a 10-unit building I want to sell, and we can get all the analytics done in that property, figure out what your net cash flow is, and then show you that if you go into something else, what the difference is, and we can play around with options. We're not charging for that. We're just hoping to get your business. So,
Got it. And so can people come to you and with a property they've already had listed with a broker and you just help them on the buy side? Or do they have to be on both sides of the transaction with you?
No, it's totally fine. We have people all the time that come to us and say, look, I got a local broker. I've been dealing with him for years. I want to stick with him. Totally fine with us. And so we'll handle the up leg, right? And the up leg just, is the property or the portfolio you're putting together that you're purchasing after your exchange. So that's really our real focus. And again, a lot of the stuff we're showing you, we've got access to inventories that we don't have to spend a lot of time searching for you specifically, because we're always searching for this stuff, and we have access to it. And so it's a different kind of a different ball game. Look, I can't tell you how many people we've dealt with that are out there insisting they're going to go find their own deal, and they come back to us when they're well into their 45-day period, say, look, I just can't find anything. What can you show me? They kind of learn the lesson the hard way. So
do you guys
available, and give us a call.
And I have to say, from my personal perspective, having done a 1031 exchange, a lot of real estate agents and brokers out there are not very familiar with 1031 exchanges. They may have done a couple of them during their career, and to be able to get somebody who has as much experience as you do and understands the rules, that's critical to a successful 1031 exchange. Because if you don't hit these deadlines, you don't do the paperwork properly, you could really blow it and you're paying a big tax bill afterwards. So the fact that you guys are doing all this great work and have all this information for the price of a real estate commission is pretty incredible. So I would encourage people to definitely check you guys out. For sure. Do you ever work with people who maybe not do a 1031 exchange, but want access to some of the great returns you guys are getting and invest through a retirement account, a 401k plan, or something like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I think probably 75% of our business is exchanges, but we still do a lot of transactions for people that they got some cash available and they want to, buy something. And what's kind of good about what we're doing here is, you can buy one of these homes in Beaumont, Texas, or Indianapolis, or something else. Sometimes, we just did literally yesterday, we're doing an Indianapolis property in someone's IRA, so we do that all the time. We have a lot of guys that are just kind of starting out and they want to start building their portfolio. And so, it's easy access. A lot of these properties, you can put $40,000 or $50,000 down and get something that has really good cash flow. And so it's a really good way to start building a portfolio. So it's not just 1031 exchanges we're dealing with.
Got it. We got a question about Portland. You guys work in Portland? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, I actually love Portland. A couple of my kids went to boarding school just south of Portland in Sheridan. So I know that market. I know the area. It's gorgeous. I love going up there. But truthfully, we just haven't done any transactions up there. And again, we can't be anywhere. We've focused on areas that we feel strongly about, and we kind of keep into those markets. So
yeah, Portland's beautiful, Rusty, but beware of the statewide rent control that they passed about 2 years ago. It's definitely a challenge, and it's only going to get ratcheted down to be made worse at some point. At this point, we have a bunch of questions that, I'm looking at them. They're kind of more legal, tax related. I want to encourage everybody to look on our calendar. We will have Bill Exeter back, who will be able to talk about these in a lot of detail and really give you some great information. And I'd like to ask both you guys, Rusty and Eddie, if we made these questions available to you, because we can't get to all of them. We're well over now, past the hour now. Can we get you guys to answer these, and then maybe we could share them with the people that attended today's webinar?
Oh yeah, not a
Sounds
problem.
Great. We will send those out to you tonight. I will ask my good friend Matthew, who's there in the background, to just output it for me, and we will get these answers. And I promise to send out answers to all these questions to people who are in attendance today. And with that, I just want to thank you guys. This was great. Very, very interesting information. It really gives people a lot of things to think about if they're just looking look at alternative investments to properties that they have in the LA area or even here in the state of California. There are options out there for you. Those properties can be managed. And if you get the right advice, you too can have a successful 1031 exchange transaction. So, and with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you again, Rusty and Eddie. Thank you, TFS Properties. Thank you, Scott Properties, once again. And please try to take the survey. Open up your camera, click on that QR code, and take a survey if you own property in Bell Gardens, Beverly Hills, Culver City, or El Monte. Very important survey about smoke-free housing. And with that, I'm going to sign off and wish everybody have a great day. Take care, everyone.